The origins of the zodiac signs begin in Mesopotamia. The astrology we know and love originated in ancient Mesopotamia, and we have the Sumerians to thank for the origins of the zodiac signs, quite literally. The oldest astrological records we have in any form of writing or documentation belong to the Sumerians, and those date back at least to 3100 BC. However, similarities between the Sumerian and Babylonian constellations and the reliefs found at the Göbekli Tepe site suggest the meanings of the constellations may predate Sumerian culture by another 7,000 years, but that's conversation for another day. It's actually a very long and in-depth conversation. I didn't really mention it in here. I mention it in the next article, but there's actually a lot of overlap between the Sumerian depictions and descriptions of the zodiac signs and Hindu mythology, as well as Egyptian mythology, and a wide range of different myths throughout the world. I don't think this is a coincidence. I have theories as to why this may have happened. The most obvious one is that we're dealing with some sort of source mythology or source culture that was disseminated throughout the world. Another potential is that human beings draw from the same intuitive source, and so there's some overlap in the intuitive impressions that they're getting from different portions of the sky, different planet meanings, and so on and so forth. I can't really prove any of that, but I suspect the answer is somewhere in between. Sumerian documents contain the oldest human writing system, Cuneiform. These Cuneiform texts hold the oldest known astrological information on the planet. Now, I will be going through and talking a little bit about some of the cuneiform signs and the Sumerian language, because it does shed additional light on the original meanings of the constellations and even the planets. Sumerian obsession with time. The Sumerians paid very close attention to the sky and the seasons, and they seemed to be obsessed with understanding time. Sumerian calendrical systems were primarily lunar, but they also included solar tabulations. The 30-day lunar calendar reigned supreme, as did the Sumerian god of the moon, Nanna. After the 30-day lunar calendar, and Nanna was the seasonal solar calendar and the sun god, Utu. This is the An sign. It means the deity An, the supreme celestial god of the sky, but it also can mean the sky or the heavens. So this An also means Dinghir, which is God or deity. And it's used as the silent determinative, which means you don't pronounce it, and it's just suffixed to the front of the word to indicate the name of a god or deity. The name of Nanna, the god of the moon, is actually written Shesh Ki. Shesh means brother. Ki means earth. Is that a coincidence? You never hear scholars talk about this, but I don't think it's a coincidence. As for the sun, we have obviously Dinghir, which goes unpronounced again, and the Utud sign or Utu. This is the Ud sign, which can be read Utu, and it means sun, light, day, time, storm, weather. It can mean a lot of different things like most cuneiform signs. When the cycles of the sun and the rising and setting of the stars and planets aligned with lunar time, it was considered fortuitous. When they acted out of turn, it was a bad sign. So basically what was going on, and we see this in particular in Babylonian astrology, they would track the rising and setting times of the most important stars and planets, the wandering stars. And when they lined up with the normal lunar cycle or the solar cycle, they just considered that a good thing. And if for some reason they didn't, which they wouldn't, they considered that ominous. Sumerian astrology lived on. As the millennia progressed, the Sumerian people and culture were overshadowed by the Akkadian Empire, and much of Sumerian knowledge, including their myths, legends, and astrological omens, remained a prominent feature in the Near East throughout the late Babylonian period. Sumerian documents were copied and transcribed into Akkadian, which was how scholars were able to decipher the cuneiform tablets. The Sumerian language had to be reconstructed through the Akkadian language, which also had to be reconstructed. So what we know about it is actually third, fourth, who knows what hand accounts. But it's interesting that they put so much effort into doing this. The best way to describe it, it's kind of like how Latin remained the official language of the Roman Catholic Church even after Italian took over for Latin in the region. Until quite recently, astrology and astronomy were considered the same science. So it's no wonder the Sumerians took such great care to record the movements of the heavens and the effects they had on the world. These astrological omens were re-recorded over thousands of years by the skilled hands of priests and scribes. They did mess up sometimes, well into the late Babylonian period. And along the way, they gave us astronomical terms still in use today, such as spheres, orbits, ecliptic, inclination, and poles. Now, depending on who you talk to, the Sumerians invented all of the things, including writing and astronomy. I don't think this was probably the case. This is just my personal take on it. Again, I don't have proof. I wasn't there. At least I don't ever remember being there. The Sumerians have records that we actually know about, but people could have been writing for thousands of years and we just don't have the records anymore, especially if the stories of the deluge are to be believed, which I don't have any reason not to believe them, especially considering how much evidence keeps coming out about a global catastrophe and a worldwide flood. I can't imagine imagine that much of human history and records and everything would still be intact after all of that. But the Sumerians still get credit for it for now. So, Uma, which means victory in Emikir, which is Sumerian. In this image, we have an Akkadian cylinder seal dating to 2300 BC, and that is depicting the goddess Nanna, who is embodied in the planet Venus right here, the sun god Utu over here, who is the god of the sun, and Enki, who is the figure we still see to this day in the constellation of Aquarius.